Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodeau, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
All right, welcome back. It's time for Good Vibes. I'm Martin Falls, and right here is Debbie Cox DeNova. And my paper's blowing all over the place. But anyway, the subject matter today is a good one. Handling toxicity kindly.
Yes.
That's a big chore.
It's a big chore.
But I'm
Toxic
listening.
behavior. Okay, so there are parameters around this conversation. I could literally talk for hours. This is a very nuanced conversation. So I want to be very clear that today's conversation is about people who show up in a toxic way to you. So something that they're doing feels toxic in your system. We are not talking about dangerous people, abusive people. If someone is a dangerous person, you need to get away from them, okay? This is specifically about people who land on you in a way that doesn't feel good. So maybe they gossip a lot. They tend to take the negative lens on everything. They talk about all the problems that they have in their world, but then whenever you offer them solutions, they just don't want, but, or in a work environment, maybe they are agreeing to do something and then they just don't do it. There are lots of different ways that people can show up that just don't feel good to you. And what you'll see a lot in the world is we'll cut them off. Cut off the toxic people in your life. And in some instances, that is absolutely great advice. What I'm going to be talking about today, though, is taking a pause before you cut people off to recognize that difficult people offer an opportunity for you to grow personally. A lot of times people are cutting off toxic people in their life as an avoidance mechanism to look at the unhealthy relationship that they actually have with themselves. And so every single time they cut somebody off and move on, here's another toxic person, right? And let's just face it, if we talk about people showing up toxically, statistically speaking, you're always going to find somebody, right? Like 1 in 25 is a sociopath, and all of these numbers. So we know that they're out there, right? You're going to see them. It's much better if we actually look at the ways in which we show up in response to these people, and to see if maybe there's a way that we can clean things up so that we can have more peace in the face of them. Because it's real easy when someone's showing up in an easy way to feel good, right?
The biggest thing in it, boy, this topic is so close to me because toxic people leave dead bodies all along the road. Yeah. And sometimes they know they're doing it. Sometimes they don't know they're doing it, but they just continue to do it. And I don't know, from an employer standpoint, and a lot of people watching this relationship standpoint, people tell me all the time that they go through that. It's for somebody who wakes up positive every morning, then you got to go through the toxic tunnel with people. That can really cause anxiety in people.
It can cause a lot of anxiety. Hopefully this conversation will help, because what you want to do, and the reason why I put kindly in there is because when I work with clients, a lot of what the hesitation is they don't want to bulldoze the kind part of themselves in the communication and setting boundaries or even leaving, right? So they want to remain a kind person, but they're feeling resentment building up about having to be around this person who behaves in this pattern in this way. So it's important to make the distinction up front between being kind and being nice, which we've talked about before. Niceness is something that typically people do not respect, because in niceness, what you're doing is you're basically saying, I'm willing to adjust myself and alter myself because I need you to like me. I need for you to like me so much that I'm actually willing to do whatever it is, like I'll people please, in order to make you. And that's not a respectable thing. Whereas kindness is actually me offering to you a goodwill and good feelings, but I still have online the ability to set boundaries. So I'm still being kind to myself. So when we talk about leading with kindness, it's about actually being kind enough to yourself that when someone is bulldozing your boundaries, when someone is coming at you in a way that doesn't feel good, that you still have have the ability online to be able to set a boundary and reroute the situation so that it feels good to you. If you don't, and this is what happens for a lot of people that I work with, is they come and they feel completely drained out by someone around them. They don't know what to do anymore. And we look at it, and what's actually happening is they're feeling drained because they're trying to do something that is impossible. They're trying to control somebody else's way of being, the way they think, the way that they behave, right? When that other person may be disinterested in changing the way that they behave. To your point, a lot of them don't even know they're showing up toxically. They think they're being rational or reasonable or looking at things from a realistic lens, being cautious, right? Some people were taught to think that way. Some people were traumatized. They had a lot of bad things happen, and they just want to make sure that they are prepared for anything negative coming forward. Whatever it is, it's important to recognize that it is not you. Most of the time, it's the stuff that they carry, and it's not a good experience for them. This is not to excuse their behavior, but it's to depersonalize it and to recognize that if you are feeling like you need to fix them, then you're actually creating your own suffering. Because if somebody is committed to having a problem, they get to have that problem. If they're committed to showing up in a negative way, they get to show up in a negative way. And if we are in the experience of saying, no, you need to fix yourself in order for me to be okay, we're in the drama triangle. You remember that? The hero, the victim, and the villain. In all cases, they're saying, you need to do something in order to make me feel okay. You need to fix yourself in order for me to feel okay. Well, their experience of life is not your responsibility, but your experience of their experience is also not their responsibility. Each one of you has your own responsibility. And so the first thing we can do is accept the way that someone is showing up and say, okay, they're choosing to have this problem. And I don't have to get dragged into it by attaching my expectation to them showing up differently.
Yeah.
I can just let them have their problem.
So what I want to ask you after the break, I want to lead you into it now. Has the toxicity changed from generation to generation? Because I've been in my business 40 years. It's a different toxicity today with a different generation than it was a generation and a generation before that. I guess I'm getting old, but it's a different philosophy on the reactions you get to certain things. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back. Good vibes. Debbie Cox DeNova. Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality. All right, we're back. We're talking about toxicity and how you can deal with that nicely or kindly. I don't know if there's a way. It's funny because I was interviewing some old coaches yesterday at Don Schwab's funeral. And Don worked here for 5 years. And I learned so much from Don in the first 20 years of HTV. I'm on the second 20. But when I'm interviewing the old coaches, they will be the first to tell you coaching's different. The way the coaches handle the players are different. The players don't want to do certain things that you could get them to do 20 years ago. It's like that anywhere in life. It's like that with employees. It's like that with kids. But the old timers, and I guess I'm one now, we're set in stone with all ways we learn. So we're not budging, but it has to do with work ethic and all kind of different things. So how do you blow up the barrier between it.
Yeah, well, a lot has changed, right, with the internet. Basically, we didn't have our parents' generation and the parents before. They weren't actually exposed to all this information about even evaluating what toxicity was even about. Like toxicity, what is that? My kids are saying things like, "Oh, she trauma dumps on me." That language wasn't even in existence before. It was just us talking to each other about our problems, right? Yeah. And so it's really important to understand that with this level of consciousness comes all sorts of advice coming from all angles, and it's important for us to evaluate, because if you take the wrong advice, you are preventing yourself from the possibility of growing, right? So if you have to deal with toxic people all over the place, of difficult people all over the place, it's important that you recognize the areas in which you're playing into your own experience of suffering, because not everybody is having the same experience of those same people, right? So once you actually have accepted, okay, well, this is how Lucy plays. That's just how Lucy, this is what Lucy does, right? And I'm accepting that, and I'm not having to fix it. I'm not worried. Like, I might give her some advice, but I know she might not take it, and that's perfectly fine, right? She's a free will being. I want that for her. But then you have to set boundaries, because if you know that being around someone for a long time drains you out, you don't want to hear that, you don't want to hear about, then it's important for you to be kind to yourself first. And kindness means that you, whenever you're feeling some kind of way, that you share it with the other person in a kind way. Hey, listen, all this talk about politics is actually bogging me down.
Lucy, you're killing me.
Lucy, what else can we talk about today, right? Yeah. And so I'm redirecting the conversation, but I'm setting a boundary. And if Lucy continues to do that, I say, listen, whenever you talk about politics, I am probably going to disengage from it right now, because it's just a lot for me. There's a lot going on in my world, and it makes me feel. And so now you're not saying, hey, Lucy, you're a Debbie Downer. You're saying, Lucy, this thing that you're doing specifically makes me feel this kind of way. And so if it happens again, remember, boundaries are about what you're going to do. If it keeps happening, right, then I'm going to have to do this. If you have somebody in the workspace who's saying, okay, like, I'm going to do this, don't worry, and they're super nice and positive, this is what drove me crazy as a boss, right? It's like, if you say you're going to do something, then go ahead and do it. And they can be nice as can be. Well, then I have to set a boundary and say, listen, in these specific instances, you said you were going to do this and you didn't. And this is a write-up, or this is what's going to happen next, right? So you're setting the boundary and letting them know, like, this thing that you did is actually causing a problem in this way. This is what needs to be done about it. But then you want to be able to show empathy without taking responsibility. So someone who's kind is showing empathy, right? Like, oh, I'm so sorry that that's happening to you. That sounds like it's really hard. But then not taking responsibility means that you remember that this is their problem. So what have you tried? What haven't you tried? What do you think you're going to do next, right? So I'm asking questions, I'm being empathetic with you, but I'm not taking it on with, like, you need to do this. What happens when someone gives you advice and they expect you to take their advice? You can feel that sense of control, right? And people resist against that. And then what happens is that the person giving this great advice gets really resentful over time, because it's like, you keep complaining about this and I keep telling you what to do. You're not doing it. And now I'm getting frustrated, resentment, and I'm going to pull back, and I'm going to violate my own sense of kindness at some point. And it's really not about that. They don't have an obligation to
you
that.
Hit the nail on the head. It makes people who are on the receiving end of the toxicity all the time become somebody they're not.
Right.
Because you get frustrated.
Exactly.
We're all human.
Right. But if you can just actually remember, they're allowed to have this problem. They're allowed to have this problem, and I can leave it. I can actually leave it alone, let them have the problem. If I've already tried to give advice and they're not interested in it, I can actually be like, okay, well, and this is the next step, wish them well. I really hope that gets better for you.
Yeah. And in a personal relationship, there's one way.
Yeah.
But in a workplace,
whole different thing, right?
Yeah,
but still the same thing, in that if you have to set a boundary, it's about communicating exactly what has been done, how it impacted the team or the company, and what needs to happen in the future if that's going to happen, right? So setting those, and that's where a lot of bosses get into to problems, is that, like, when I'm coaching, it's like I've befriended my team now, and I feel a little bit hesitant about actually informing them about this, and there are these dynamics that get really sticky. Well, that's a you problem. That's not a them problem. They have no idea what you're even getting resentful for, because it hasn't been communicated. And then by the time you do communicate it, now you're doing it personal, because you're so resentful that you're negative in the workplace, and they're feeling all sorts of ways. Well, that doesn't have to happen that way, right? So the other thing is that you can redirect whatever's going on. You can say, okay, so tell me something good that's happened today, right? Someone starts to gossip, and you go, well, what just completely change the subject, or actually ask them a positive framed question to teach them that in your presence, what they can count on is that you're going to redirect to something that feels better.
I had one particular girlfriend. I used to say, well, what good happened today?
Yeah.
And that boy would the brakes on.
Yes, because people do learn. They don't realize, right? They don't realize they're coming across in a negative
She
way.
was drama dumping on me.
Trauma dumping.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whether drama dumping or trauma dumping.
Exactly.
So to me, sometimes it's the same.
Sometimes.
But what a great topic.
Thank you. Thank you.
We need to do some more of these.
We definitely do. The last thing is just create emotional distance for yourself. Just,
All right.
Yeah.
Cool deal. Can't wait till the next one. All right. There you have it. Good vibes. We'll see you next week.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health System. Your health is our legacy. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.